It's impossible to say which came first, love of outdoors, love of art. People sometimes say, how long have you been an artist, how long have you been a naturalist? And the answer is, I've always been an artist and naturalist. But that's nothing special. Every single little kid in every culture, and I've been to Africa about a dozen times, India 5 times, I've observed other cultures. I lived in Nigeria, taught high school for 2 years. All little kids love art, and all little kids love animals and nature. Every culture. Except most normal human beings, when they get around the age of 12 or 13 and get into puberty, they go on to more mature things. And I just never grew up. I've been equally doing the nature and the art absolutely in tandem ever since, and it looks as if it's too late now. I'm not going to grow up. How I became connected with the natural world as a young boy is one of those topics, like how did Wayne Gretzky become connected to a hockey rink as a young boy? It's just the way I always was when I grew up. It could be that I grew up on Chaplin Crescent in Toronto on a ravine, the old Beltline ravine, and so I just climbed over the back fence, and there I was in nature with a creek with turtles in it and that sort of thing. Or it could be that my mother sent me to the Royal Ontario Museum Junior Field Naturalist when I was 8 or 10 years old, and there I found kids who of a like mind who are also oddballs like me. But I was just always a naturalist. The single biggest impediment for connecting young kids to nature can be summed up in one word: superstimuli. The kids are superstimulated to what, through evolution, that we're all vulnerable to sex and, I don't want to say drugs, sex and nourishment such as too much sugar, too much fat, too much junk food, and also hyperstimulation to, I don't want to just say violence, but adrenaline pushing action. So it could be zombies. What's this about zombies? It could be vampires. I don't get it. I don't understand the appeal, except that it gives kids an adrenaline rush, and also playing violent video games and blowing people away is super stimulating, and the kids are now become totally vulnerable, and it's like an addiction. They're addicted to this. And how can you, well, I remember they used to say, because my mom's brothers were in World War I, how can you keep them down on the farm after they've seen Paris? And how can you have them enjoy a dandelion after they've been hyperstimulated with all this sex and violence and adrenaline rush? That's the biggest impediment. Technology is one of the most important, I guess the single most important factor in hyperstimulation of kids. For some reason, I'm sure neuroscientists have been studying it now for a decade or two, it seems to hit certain neurons in their brains, and this little device they're holding in their hand is much more attractive than the rest of the world, than their family, than their parents, than an eagle flying by. I don't know what it is. Physiologists are very interested because it is a huge threat. It's a huge inducement toward obesity, a huge inducement toward getting into dangerous areas such as cyberbullying and all of these areas that are really bad, not only for people's bodies, but their brains and souls. The Robert Bateman Foundation hopes to make the connection between human beings and nature, which has been separating actually ever since the Neolithic Revolution, when we actually can grow our own stuff. We don't have to go out and hunt and gather. We don't have to pay attention to all the other different species because we've got 3 species, goats and corn and whatever, and that's all we need to know. It's been separating for over 10,000 years. But since the advent of TV and the screens, it's been just absolutely accelerating. And the only way you can do it, really the only way you can do it, is through experiential learning. Taking the kids out for a hike for half an hour once a month, or often once a year, the nature field trip, and then they have the field trip to the factory, and then they have the field trip to the basketball game or whatever it is. That doesn't do it. They have to be immersed, total immersion in nature, preferably for 2 weeks. I absolutely am convinced if every North American high school kid had 2 weeks immersed in nature without any electronic devices, they would love it, and B, they would be different people when they come out. There is all kinds of evidence of schools, sometimes they're private schools that have the budgets to do that, and it really works. It works all the time. So we need to redirect our funding and redirect our philosophy of education, and it can be done. The Bateman Foundation is fledgling. This 24th of May, which is my birthday, incidentally, I was born on Queen Victoria's birthday, same date, but a different year. And also Bob Dylan was born on the 24th of May. And I think I'm philosophically halfway between Queen Victoria and Bob Dylan, if that's not too much of a stretch. So we've only been going for 2 or 3 years. And it's taken that long to get a very nice little art museum dedicated to my art, nature art, on the waterfront in Victoria, right in front of the legislature in a heritage building right around the corner from the Empress Hotel and the Royal BC Museum. And so we are doing that now. We're bringing school groups through. We're designing programs that are outreaching in the schools, but they're tiny. And if I want to make any difference, I mean, if the foundation wants to make it, size matters. What we need is a good business plan of how we can get those kids and their parents, because their parents sit on their fannies and look at screens all the time too, out into nature. And last time I checked, there's nature somewhere near. We get a business plan, I'm convinced we can get serious people with deep pockets. It's a huge worthy cause to do it. So we're just on the threshold of doing that. The one message is pay attention. It's all the rage now with meditation and those kind of alternative lifestyles. And it's one word you often hear from the Dalai Lama and everybody. That one word is mindful. Pay attention. I'd love to give a quote, which is my favorite quote, and I give in all my speeches. It's from Georgia O'Keeffe, who's arguably the most famous woman artist in history, even more famous than Emily Carr, but around the same era. And Georgia O'Keeffe did big blow-ups of flowers and skulls and things like that down in Arizona and New Mexico. And here's her quote. "Nobody sees a flower, really. It takes time. Like to have a friend takes time." So if I had one thought with people, to be mindful, take time to look at what you're looking at, slow down and pay attention and be mindful and take time to look at nature, but to look at each other too. Well, my hopes and dreams for the future is that we will stop talking about, which has been my nemesis since the 60s, giving talks, this, to me, out-of-date mentality, well, you can't stop progress. So what we have to do is tear down. It's this dreaded 20th century modernist philosophy. Out with the old, in with the new. That's what Trotsky said. That's what Stalin said. That's what Mao said. Out with the old, in with the new. Destroy and build new stuff all the time, and we got to keep having progress. Well, I got news for people that say that it's over. The earth can't take any more. We can't take any more resources. I want people to have lower expectations and to get satisfaction from the simple things in life that I had when I was growing up, without TV, barely had radio, with no devices, and my grandparents had. In fact, there's evidence, the way the economy is going, if we can do it gently and with grace, we can shrink our expectations in the world and have a world where my grandchildren's lives will be more like my grandparents' lives than they will be like this madhouse that we're living in now, this destructive, insane madhouse. And that would be my fervent wish, that we do it gracefully, because it's going to happen, either gracefully or it's going to be catastrophic. can hear the ravens